Welcome to Decades of Horror, the 1970s. This is episode 161.
Gruesome Magazine.
Hello again, I am Doc Rodden, and this is a podcast about horror films released between 1970 and 1979. For this very special episode, we revisit the podcast episodes of the Monster Movie Podcast, listing our favorite horror films of each year of the 1970s. Yes, back in the summer of 2013, the man, the Black Saint, the one and only, Santos Ellin Jr., joined me for a special countdown, a countdown that would give birth to the Decades of Horror in the 1970s. Together, we spent like 2 or 3 hours talking about our favorite films. We presented the first half of that in episode 161, where we counted down from 1970, to 1974. And with this episode, part 2, we're going to do 75 through 79. Now, the films we chose weren't the ones that everybody knows. There's no Jaws, there's no Exorcist, there's no Alien even. We pick these ones that kind of mean something special to just us, Santos and myself, and bring a special feeling of seeing the film in the theater or on a special night somewhere later on TV or something. But these films really sparked a lot of conversation between Santos and myself, and then later with Jeff and Bill and Chad and the rest of the crew that would join us on various episodes of Decades of Horror. And wanted to take a little hiatus from the regular scheduled episodes for vacations and trips and stuff that various of the Grue-Crew had planned. So we're revisiting these 2 episodes, and they're very special and dear to my heart. I miss Santos so very, very much, but I am just so thrilled for you to have this opportunity to hear he and I talk about these films. Santos was, if you knew the man, or if you heard the man, or you listened to him on Decades or H&R, you knew that he had an incredible passion for horror films and filmmaking, and a very unique take and flavor for those films. Pay attention to 1978, and you're going to hear one of his all-time favorite films. If you know who he is, you know which one he's going to pick. But let's get into things and let's take a look. This is, once again, unedited. I'm going to play some clips over top of it, but it's the unedited version of the podcast from the Monster Movie Podcast that I was doing, and he joined me back in 2013. So without further ado, let's take a listen. Welcome to the Monster Movie Podcast. Join us this week for the return to the 70s as we take a look at some of the fashion, fiends, and frenzy of our favorite horror films from 1970 to 1979. This is episode 55, recorded August 1st, 2013.
This place is gonna be rotten.
The funeral is about to begin.
I want you to go as quietly as possible, not make a sound until I tell you to run.
Kill the brain, and you kill the ghoul.
I can't explain.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
They feed only on warm. This place is gonna be rotten.
I'm your host, Doc Rodden, and welcome back to the second half of the podcast about the 1970s. Santos Ellin Jr. joins me from the HorrorNews.net podcast, and he's here with me. This is the second half. We recorded a very long podcast. It was like 2.5 hours or more, and chopped it down to make these 2 1 hour, a little bit over podcast. And this is the second half. It starts with 1975 and goes through 1979.
I'm not going to sit here and say a whole lot. Let's jump right into it with Santos and myself picking up with 1975. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you at the end. So 1975, this would be another big year in horror. A big movie would come out. We're not going to talk about that one. We're going to talk about two other ones. It also has a whole lot of really fun horror films.
They were great movies in 75.
Yeah. We've picked out two. What is yours?
My big film from 75 was called Bug. B-U-G. Bug.
I love this film. I'm going to start out saying Bug, this is one of my favorites.
Bug is just a kick-ass. His director's name was Janos Zwark. I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but it starred Bradford Dillman and Joanne Miles and Patty McCormick, who's an adult. If you guys watch a lot of older films, Patty McCormick was the lead in a film from the late 50s called The Bad Seed. She was the bad seed, a very bad little girl who got it at the end. And here she's all grown up, and she gets it from... Well, let me go back a second. What happens here, the movie is based on a book called The Hephaestus Plague, which was also a documentary that was released in the 70s that I saw as well. It was really scary about insects taking over the world, how they could take over the world if they wanted to. An earthquake happens, and crack in the ground opens up in California, in I think it was Riverside, California. And from out of the crack come out some pretty big cockroaches that have been under the surface, it turns out, Earth's surface for millions of years. They don't have any eyes. They move around by feel, instinct. And they move really slowly because the pressure is so much different above ground than it is where they came from. So slowly they're being crushed by Earth's atmosphere. And they have the annoying talent of being able to rub their antennas together and make fire. So...
now, they had a purpose for it because they consume...
Oh, they consumed ash.
The carbon and the ash, yeah.
The carbon, yeah. But even so, you got roaches shooting fire out their asses. It's their rear antenna, I should add.
And it also led to this great shot of this woman screaming with the burning cockroach on the phone. The old-timey phones,
and
right?
That is Patty McCormick.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a great, great scene. That was the original poster, I believe, actually.
Oh, man.
And what makes the film even scarier is that once they're discovered by the Bradford Dillman character, who's a professor, a college professor, he starts experimenting with them, and he mates them with everyday cockroaches. And what happens is that the progeny of these bugs are a lot worse than the originals. These bugs are smart now. Not only can they fart fire, but they're smart. You know, they eat meat. They learn to speak English. They don't talk, but they
write it out on the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, they communicate, man. They're not stupid, and they can fly. On top of everything else, they can fly. So now you have flying, meat-eating,
fire-farting
bugs. How can you go wrong? It's just an amazing movie, man. It kicks so much ass. It's, again, a lot of this movie, it's a low-budget film. It's almost the last film that the great William Castle produced.
Well, this is the last film he produced.
Is it? Oh,
yeah,
I'm thinking about
it is the last film he produced.
I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the last film he produced.
Now, the director, before we get too far, the director would go on to do Jaws 2.
Jaws 2.
Supergirl, Somewhere in Time. He's still directing. He's directed episodes of Fringe lately. Heroes.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I know he did some early Night Gallery episodes. That's where I remembered him from initially.
Yeah.
And I forgot about Supergirl.
Supergirl. Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of people that would like that. Although, anyway, keep going. Helen Slater, woohoo!
Yeah, Helen Slater shares a birthday with me.
Does she?
Yes, we were both born on the same day, so there's that kinship there. Me, Helen Slater, and Tim Conway. We're like
Jim Conway, awesome.
That's my claim to fame. I share a birthday with those two. This movie really. This is going to sound very cliche, but this movie bothered me because I grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up in a ratty. When I grew up, there were no buildings. There were just abandoned lots, block after block of abandoned lots, empty. But our playgrounds were empty buildings, abandoned buildings. That's where we played. We had roaches. It sounds like bullshit. Oh yeah. But we had roaches. They didn't shoot fire. They didn't talk to us, but we had roaches. And when I saw a movie with big roaches, big hard-shelled roaches that did all the stuff that these fucking roaches did, it struck a chord with me because, especially during the summer when we get the water bugs, which were kind of big, which are basically giant roaches, it scared me. The movie's really scary. And once they started talking, well, spelling out words on the fucking walls, then I was like, fuck, man. How far, as stupid as it may sound, but how far-fetched is that? I mean, back then, to me, it seemed possible. The movie, what's great about this movie, that it makes it all plausible. In my mind, this shit could happen. If some nutty scientist decided to crossbreed different strains of roach, who knows what the fuck would come up, especially when these guys just came up from under the ground. I didn't like the end of the movie. I thought it ended kind of abruptly.
Mm-hmm. And awkwardly, yeah.
And awkwardly. But that's a minor quibble because it's so entertaining up to that point. And you definitely get your money's worth. I highly recommend this movie to anyone who hasn't seen it. Again, it's available on Netflix. You can get it. You can watch it. And you can be amazed at the fire-farting roaches just as I was.
And you should. You need to. And you need to get my film as well from 1975, which is let's talk about the cast.
Okay, before you get into it, it does have the greatest cast.
It does. So people are going to start guessing this pretty quickly if they haven't read the show notes. We have Ernest Borgnine, Eddie Albert, Ida Lupina, the William Shatner, Keenan Ween, Tom Skerritt, who is if we were to do bigger names in horror, we would get to quite a bit, and Joan Prather, who I don't know if people would know who she is, but she's great in this film, and one John Travolta in one of his earliest film roles.
Tony Manero.
The greatest thing in this, of course, is Ernest Borgnine as the big bad in here, Jonathan Corbis, and we're talking about The Devil's Reign. That's right. Quite possibly the greatest film ever filmed. The Devil's Reign. No, it's far from the greatest film, but it is it's just so bizarre. It has something in common with your film, as it's in the desert a lot.
Yep.
Or at least less than plush locale. There's not a lot of green.
It's a very very desolate.
Barren, yeah. Right? And it's kind of two movies in one. You start off with William Shatner, and then shit happens, and then you come back with Tom Skerritt and his wife, and shit happens, and then the two stories come together, and more shit happens. And you have this great character from Ernest Borgnine, Jonathan Corbis, who, whenever he shows up, this film just immediately launches into epic awesomeness.
Well, yeah, Borgnine, he grabs it, he tears this role to shreds, man. He was born to be Marty, which, way back in the 50s, which he won his Oscar for, but for nothing else, he was born to play Jonathan Corbis. This role was tailor-made for him, man. He's so scary. Even the name is scary, though. The character's name just sounds evil. Corbis. It's just a scary fucking name, and Borgnine rips it to shreds, man. He's so great in this movie. His first scene, his opening scene, when he first, who calls me from out of the pit? And that, right there, you're like, oh fuck, man, I'm in this. Man. This is good. It's gonna be great. And the makeup was incredible.
Well, the makeup was great. Now, especially his makeup. Now, the film is pushed for different makeup. That's the result of Devil's Reign, and we'll get to that here in a second. But the devil makeup, the horn makeup, is is... if you glance at it, it might be just a tad funny, a tad silly, but it is so photogenic. And the camera loves, the horns and the goatee, and the broadening of the face and the makeup. It's just really effective.
It works perfectly for the character. It really does, man. There's nothing funny about it. When I saw it, I didn't think there was anything goofy about it, man. It was.
He looked like Satan. I mean, he was like, that's what Satan looks like. He looks like Jonathan Corman.
I bought it hook, line, and sinker, man. I was there completely. And not to take anything away from Borgnine, but Shatner was actually really good in this movie.
He's a good, and there's a number of little 70s films that he did that could and maybe will show up on this list.
Yeah. The scenes with Shatner and Borgnine inside and outside the church, when they have their showdown, they're really two actors that, if you ask me, they're two actors really enjoying themselves.
Yeah, when they have that face-off out in front of the car. Yeah,
they're really, really enjoying themselves, and it comes across so well in the film, man. I thought it was a shame that we lose Shatner's characters at not long after that. Mm-hmm. I would have loved to see him at the get through the rest of the movie. Actually, I'm not a big William Shatner fan. Don't get me wrong. Believe it or not, I'm not a big Shatner fan, but he's great in this movie.
Yeah, between this and a film that we'll talk about here in a few years, love it.
Yeah, it's and if you want to get to what the posters would call, I remember the posters. They were really well. This is what got us into the theater. They had a great poster.
Well, the re-release did, because they re-released this film after the success of Welcome Back, Kotter.
I don't remember. Yeah, I remember
it came out before, and then it would release like months later. That fall, Welcome Back, Kotter came on, and John Travolta would rise to stardom.
Up your nose with a rubber hose. Yeah.
And it would come out again because they want to push his presence.
Right, his name was above the title, I think.
And he's
starring John Travolta.
Yeah, and he's like in there for 30 seconds?
If that. I think that's a bit much. Even 15 seconds. He has one line, and that's it.
But you recognize his chin. Wow.
That's true. He's got that little dent in there. Yeah, he's But the posters, I remember, they called it. They said absolutely the most incredible ending of any motion picture. And if that's not going to get people into the theater, man, then nothing will. We had to see it happen at the end of that movie.
It's the title payoff. It's the rain. The devil's rain comes down, and it melts all the devil people. And
it melts them into little piles of colored wax or whatever the hell, colored goo, whatever the fuck it was.
Oh, man. But it's silly now, but it was effective then. Holy cow. It's just like, they're melting. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, no one said that. No one said, I'm melting. That would have been
No, they didn't say it, but
that would have been really awesome.
I'm melting.
And again, we should point out that, again, the ending of this movie, it keeps on going after that. It has a really downbeat ending.
Ooh, yes.
A really downbeat ending.
Yes.
And that
not gonna give it away.
Sticks through the end credits. Actually, if you keep on watching it, it stays there, that final scene, and the actress who's, Joan Prather, she's in that last scene, she's still acting as the credits are going by. It's so depressing. It's so
effective.
It's really effective, man.
So you should see this movie.
You have to see it. Robert Fuest directed it, and he directed he directed the Fibes movies.
Yes, which is the films we could have talked about.
Yeah. They deserve a category all to themselves, though, actually. But he was a really kick-ass director. I wish he'd worked more.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on. Let's back to 1976 in your choice, and we're the last vampire to show up.
1976, and this will be pretty much the biggest director that I mentioned. The film is called Martin, and is directed by George Romero. Yay!
This is an overlooked film of his.
A vastly overlooked film, man. Martin is, I dare say, it's the best vampire film I've ever seen. Except, to this day, I really don't know if it's a vampire film or not, which is part of the beauty of it. the story is about a young man named Martin. He doesn't have a last name, I don't believe. And he believes he's a vampire. He just, in his heart, in his soul, he thinks he's a vampire. And he feeds on people with a syringe. He puts people to sleep with a sedative, and then
How Dexter.
very Dexter, and then bleeds them with another syringe, and slowly sips on that. It's is he crazy? We don't know. He ends up living with his uncle, who is named Kuda, Tati Kuda, I think his name was, played by Lincoln Mazel, in a great performance by Lincoln Mazel. Now, his uncle believes that Martin is a vampire, a Nosferatu, he calls him. And it's his job to kill this Nosferatu. He's just waiting for the right time and the place to do it. I remember Romero had called Martin a movie about all of the monsters in the world, and he proposed that monsters are simply exaggerations of a strain that's present in all of us. So you wonder, the idea, is Martin really a vampire? He doesn't have any fangs. He uses that straight razor to, make cuts across people's arms or his legs, and you can suck their blood quietly. He's a considerate vampire, but is he really a vampire? Or is he just feeding into the legends, that he's been told over all the years? Now, Martin's not really scary. I was never really scared by Martin. What Martin is effective. It's unnerving. It's atmospheric. It's brutal, especially the end. It's a really brutal ending, and again, this is another film that, if you sit through the credits and you listen, you don't look, you listen to what's happening, things are going on. You have to listen very closely, though, because the movie doesn't really end when you think it ends. There's stuff going on afterwards. There are great performances from, like I said, John Amplis and Lincoln Mazel, but Tom Savini's in this movie also, and he makeup maestro Tom Savini's in this film, and he has a very good, small but a very good role. And George Romero's wife, who's named Christine Romero, she's also in the film. She plays Savini's fiance, and she has and Martin's cousin, and she has a nice role too. She's a very good actress. Martin is a very overlooked film that's heavy on atmosphere. It's very light on frights. It's not, like I said, it didn't really scare me, but it made me think, and it sticks with you. The performances stick with you, and the questions that it makes you ask about what's really going on, they stick with you. And for that, it's my favorite for that year.
Yeah, it's a thinking man's vampire. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, my film from '76. If you thought killer frogs were silly, what do you think about the idea of killer worms?
Oh, worms are so scary.
Oh, man.
No, worms are horrifying.
The only way killer worms can be scary is if there are thousands and thousands, maybe millions of them, swarming around and suck you down and crawl into your skin. That's how they would be scary, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens in Squirm, a low-budget southern United States film, very, 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 very Atlanta, very Georgia.
Very.
It's a delightfully bizarre film with really interesting, if slightly stereotypical characters.
Yeah.
And they're in the South. This one, it's kind of weird. I don't know if I can accurately describe what this one boy is showing up to this town for. But a storm is coming through, and with a little help from electricity and some other questionable things in the soil and a lot of rain, mumbo jumbo science fiction horror film magic happens, and the worms, the earthworms, these big monstrous sized worms, crawl up out of the ground and start devouring a small town. And some of the creepiest scenes, there's this love triangle of sorts going on, and the boyfriend, our hero's in town, and he falls in love with this ginger girl. Her name's not Ginger, she's red-haired. And her boyfriend is just very, very crazy. And then once he gets the worms in him, it just becomes nasty.
Yeah, man, he becomes something else.
And that's the effects you see with the worms crawling out of his face.
Yeah, effective to the man. They were so good.
Between that and when they crawl down the stairs and the room is just like hip deep in worms crawling around, and they're all wet and muddy and gross, and they bite into you, so that everybody's got these bite marks where they're bleeding out of their arms and legs. It's just, you wouldn't think that worms could be frightening, but here they did it. I don't know. This film, it just crawls under your skin, man. It just does it.
Crawls under your skin. Listen, what makes this film, what made it work for me was the amount of worms. You can stomp on a couple of dozen worms. You know what I mean? That's not a big deal. But there are literally millions of worms. I mean, there's like rooms full of worms, man. People are swimming in worms in this fucking movie.
They attack
a
house.
All hungry worms.
They attack a house and fill up the house with worms.
Fill up the house with I remember reading that, I don't know, they had like 250,000 worms I remember reading that they wiped out, like, I think they filmed it in New England or something, and I think they wiped out the whole supply of worms for like a year of this particular worm that these were fishing worms, and they just couldn't get, this movie used up every worm on the East Coast, basically, and they're all there in this fucking movie, man, and they're so disgusting.
They're vile, man.
Yeah, they have that squishy sound. There's a lot of close-ups of these worms. Yeah, I used to go fishing with my dad a lot in the 70s too, and we would buy a box of bloodworms, and they were called bloodworms because they secreted this blood-like ooze. Oh, they were horrible. And you had to grab them by the head and pinch their head a little bit, and these two pincers would come out. Big fucking pincers too. I mean, if they got a hold of your finger, it would really hurt. And they look a lot like these worms.
Yes.
There's a lot of shots of pincers in this, and that really sold it for me because I dealt with worms like that before. And one at a time in your hand, it's creepy because if you made the wrong move while you were trying to hook it, get it on your hook, and it caught a piece of you, that really hurt. And here we got 250,000 of these motherfuckers just in your house, nowhere to go. You're just dead. You're dead. There's nothing you can do. And again, with the sound effects and the practical effects, the worm makeup, the worms under the skin, it's one of the most effective. It was one of the most memorable movies of the 70s. Once you see it, you'll never forget it. Lieberman, the director, Jeff Lieberman, his career was, he's still milking this for as much as it's worth.
But also has a great title.
Squirm is a great, it says it all right there.
And it rhymes with what the character is, but
worm.
Even though it doesn't physically say worm, it might as well.
You might as well. I was on IMDb. It says that Stallone was actually really trying to get the role of Roger in this movie. I would have killed. That would have made this movie epic. As epic as it is, if Stallone was in this movie.
Well, do you think people know about this film? Is this a well-known film?
I think it's garnered a reputation over the years. It's more a word of mouth thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know how successful it was when it came out, when it was originally released, but over the years it's garnered a hell of a reputation. And like I said, Lieberman's still working it for all he can, and it's that good a movie. It's really well directed film too. Technically, it had to be a bitch to make. I mean,
well, it also has
how do you wrangle worms?
It's also pretty well written for what it is. I mean, it really has character conflicts in it, and it has a really interesting triangle. It also has family politics going on, and the sister has a nice warm moment in it. Mm-hmm. That's pretty significant to the story. The relationship between those three characters, the two sisters and this new boyfriend that comes to town. It draws you in a lot of different ways, and of course it has, it makes Worms flipping creepy, man.
Scary, exactly. Who would think? Who would think you can make a movie where worms are scary, man?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be different if you had spiders. Now, let's move to 1977.
Yeah, 1977. My favorite film, one of my favorite films of all time, actually. But this is from '77, and it's called Kingdom of the Spiders, starring William Shatner, who we just spoke about in the great Devil's Reign film. William Shatner plays the veterinarian named, he has a great name in this one. His name is Rack Hansen. Such a great porno name, man. Rack Hansen. I love that name.
This arguably, I'm going to jump in, this arguably might be his best role.
He's so Shatner in this movie. This is where the whole mystique of fuck Star Trek. This is where the whole mystique of Shatner should have come from. This is where Shatner is. He is the Shat. You know what I mean? This is the serious shit right here, man. Matt Hansen, he gets called to this farm. There's a bunch of farm animals are dying in this small town, and it's apparently they're being killed by spiders, and no one knows why. And it turns out that the spiders are again just much like frogs. Spiders are a little pissed because man isn't spraying pesticides and killing them off. So the spiders decide to fight back. And you can't fuck with spiders, man. Spiders are no joke. Spiders are inherently scary. People are just scared. Even the little dinky tiny ones. They're scary because they have 6 legs, 8 legs. What the fuck? They crawl. They bite. They spin webs. They're nasty little fuckers. In here, they're like tarantulas. They're all tarantulas. They're big, hairy fucking spiders. And they're everywhere. What's great about Kingdom of the Spiders is that they used real fucking spiders, man. 95% of what you see on the screen is real.
And not only did they use them, but the actors have them on their bodies. On
their bodies, exactly. When you see Shatner covered in spiders, those are real spiders, man. Those are no joke. And granted, some of them there's a couple of plastic ones tossed around. But they're real spiders, man. And props to any actor who's going to get into film and let them put live tarantulas, one tarantula on their body, let alone a dozen. Let them crawl the way they are. Man. This movie's no joke. It's the serious business. And the spiders aren't going to lose this fight, man. They're not going to lose this fight. There's some really funny music cues in this movie because I think it's such a low-budget film that they had to use a lot of library cues. Mm-hmm. And there's one cue especially at the very end of the film, which, again, is a very downbeat ending, classic 70s downbeat ending, that's stolen, I'm positive. It's taken from an episode of Twilight Zone that I can't name off the top of my head, but I know it's from a Twilight Zone film. And it's a cheesy looking shot too, but it's one of the scariest final shots of any film in the 70s because it's at that point you realize that the spiders win. Shatner is so good in this movie, as good as he was in Devil's Reign. He's so good in this movie. Tiffany Bowling, who did a couple of exploitation films in the 70s, she's really good too. Woody Strode, who was in Spartacus. He was the black fighter in Spartacus. He has a great part in it. It was directed by John Bud Cardos, who directed another really good movie from the 70s called The Dark.
Ooh, yes. Well, yes, really good is a loose term here, but yes.
I love The Dark, and The Dark has a great cast.
Yeah,
William Devane and Keenan Wynn. It's a killer cast. Silly creature, but I love the movie. Mm-hmm. They don't make movies like Kingdom of the Spiders anymore. No. Now everything is CGI and animatronics and stuff. We didn't have any of this stuff back in '77, man. We had spiders, and we had actors that were hungry. That Star Trek was gone. Star Trek was over. Shatner was doing commercials for malls in Canada. He needed something, man. So throw some spiders on me. Fuck it, I'm gonna do this. And God damn it, this is one of the most effective films. If you have any kind of phobia towards insects, then try a double bill of Squirm and Kingdom of the Spiders to really fuck you up, man. It's just a great movie.
It's one of my favorites. But it isn't my favorite.
Wow.
But my favorite did come out in 1977.
Oh, yep, here we go.
And this is here at the Monster Movie Podcast. I've mentioned this film quite a lot, and there are many people out there that I've been waiting patiently for 53 episodes for me to talk about this film. And there will be a day that I will do nothing but talk about this film for the entire podcast. So I am just going to give everybody a taste of my love for this film. 1977, everything, Jaws had come out a few years past. Everything was big about, killer, the killer shark. And we've had, they had orcas, they had grizzlies, and all kinds of different things would end up being attacking man. So when they ran out of big animals, they turned to
automobiles.
An automobile. And they made the car. Which I saw this film in the theaters and was just absolutely, I loved it. I loved the look of the car. I loved the entire atmosphere of the film, the mystery of what was driving the car, what wasn't driving the car, the relationship between the car and the characters, like especially Catherine Lloyd's character, and how she pisses it off by cussing at it.
Cars don't like being cussed at.
Well,
so everybody knows that.
Well, this particular way she cussed at it, it also had James Brolin as the sheriff, and he, had these daughters, and there was a relationship issues there, and there were his relationship with the town, and the relationship with other, the sheriff that was there, and his buddy. His buddy, oh my God! Can't even find his name. It's not listed here. Holy crap! And I'm losing it. He's not even listed on here. That's criminal. But it's the guy from Deliverance.
Yeah, what was his name? Shoot.
I can't believe it's not listed here on IMDb. But he, I'm totally dropping the ball in here. But let's talk about Kim Richards and Kyle Richards, are the daughters, who were famous children actors at the time.
Yes.
They were the witches of Witch Mountain, right? The Witch Mountain.
Yes, they were in those Disney films.
And one of them was the one that got shot in John Carpenter's film, 13.
The Attack on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
The ice cream. Oh, yeah.
But it also had
was a great scene.
Yeah, it had R.G. Armstrong as this Amos guy that lived in town, and he was this crotchety old guy who liked to beat up his wife and handle dynamite was his job.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a despicable character. But it was so anyway. But really, the thing about it is the car, right? And
yep.
And it just had this. The biggest thing is the design. It just had this great design. Ronnie Cox, by the way, is the guy. Is the other deputy, and he had a drinking problem, and it was this great thread to story, and he and James Brolin had some fairly interesting chemistry together, and he treated it so seriously, which is really the funniest thing about this, is that this movie is fairly absurd, but
fairly,
yeah, but Ronnie Cox is in here treating this character with. He's just giving it everything, man. He's treating it so seriously, and he's got this drinking problem, and he really, wanting this one boy who goes missing at the beginning of the film. He's one of the bicyclers, and he's now suspect of maybe killing the girl before they realize that the car is the one. And he's like, no, this boy wouldn't do it. I was really championing him, and I was getting him off to go to college. And, and he was so betrayed that he found out the guy didn't even apply to college. It has absolutely nothing to do with the idea that this car is running around killing people. But he's treating it as, just utmost seriousness and this weight. It's so wonderful. But yeah, let's talk about the car itself.
The car was awesome.
The car's design and the horn.
Yeah.
I mean, the horn. Even today, it would work. That horn.
The dude that designed the Batmobile for the George Barris.
He designed the car.
He designed the car.
Yeah, and they basically chopped the top off, chopped it down and sleeked it out, and they took the doorknobs off. Mm-hmm. And recessed the lights a little bit and bumped up the frames around the wheels, the wheel frames, and then put this great grill on the front of it.
The grill makes it.
Oh, it has this evil presence. The chop top is what sells it, and it just looks evil.
It is exceedingly sleek. People compared. Negatively, they compare the car with Jaws, with shark with wheels, but it has that look. It's as it winds around the town and goes down the road. It's like a shark.
If the Great White had wheels, it would look like this car.
Yeah, it
really would.
In that aspect, it's very effective.
And now you have told me before we started that you do not like this film.
No, I don't. I never found the car to be especially scary. Cool, yeah, but not scary.
Before you get too far into other reasons to scare, they do manage in a couple scenes to bring the fear out. And I'm gonna argue with you a little bit here. The scene where the Kathleen Lloyd character goes home and is dropped off by herself. They just had this great action sequence, this great sequence where the car attacks the kids at God knows what it is, some kind of race car track thing. Mm-hmm. And they end up in a graveyard, and you get this whole hallowed ground kind of thing, and the car can't get into the graveyard, so they're safe there. And right. she stands up and basically chases it away by cussing at it and cursing at it, which is wonderful when you're a kid. And she's a teacher in front of kids, and anyway, so yeah. The car takes offense, and it attacks her in her home, and it has this great atmosphere. It's dark. You see the car headlights kind of in the distance. The wind's blowing. There's music blaring. And she gets on the phone with James Brolin. She goes, I hear it. I hear the engine of the damn car. And you see it coming and behind her, and you know it's going to happen. And then it hits the house, and it launches feet in the air, smacks her right across, goes through the house. And that scene is brilliant.
Again, it's a well-shot scene. You're right about that. And, it's effective to look at, but it didn't move me. I just don't.
What do you mean it didn't move you? I mean,
scary about a car.
Yeah, but you're rooting for the. She's the heroine of the story. James Brolin's the hero, but she's right along with him. They're building a life together. She's trying to, become the. She's trying to reach out to her kids, and the kids actually love her. And then it's just they need to become a family unit. Because his wife. If we didn't explain that, but James Brolin's wife is either left or passed away. I never really get said. You can assume that she's passed away.
Yeah, I assume she was dead.
And they're slowly becoming this family unit, and you can see that happen. So you're rooting for her, and then she gets off. It's powerful. I can't. I was invested with this character.
What I thought was effective was that there's no rationale given at all to why any of this is happening.
It just shows up.
Yeah, the car just shows up. It doesn't. Why this town? There's no idea why. Who's behind the wheel? There's no idea. I mean, I assumed it was Satan,
Yeah,
That's
it's
what I
just the
was assuming.
force of nature in a car.
Yeah, but none of that is explained, and I thought that was the way to go with it. Actually, that works for the film because there's a mystery to it, you know. But I just don't find cars very scary, and the end of the film really bugs me to this day because something happens at the end of the film, and it happens off screen. The characters talk about it. The characters are looking at it, but we don't see it.
Yeah, you do.
No,
Yeah,
I
you do.
didn't
I see it. I see it in the smoke and the fire.
I just saw smoke and fire, man. I didn't, you know, I'm going to have to, it's been a long time, but I distinctly recall, it was a group of us, and we were like, well, what the fuck? What happened? I didn't see the...
Yeah, I guess I probably, maybe I injected a lot into it, but yeah, there's something that happens at the end.
You see what I'm seeing? And I'm like, what are they seeing? You know, we never see it. And
I saw something.
The film ends, and I'm like, oh, what was it, man? God, jeez, this is... You know, I will say, and I think I mentioned this to you before, I'm in the minority. I didn't realize it's like a cult of people who really love this film. I was on a Facebook board chatting about something, and someone had mentioned the car, and I hate that film. And I was attacked.
I can imagine.
People verbally beating the crap out of me over how great this film is, and I need to watch it again. I'm like, wow. You know, I had no idea that this movie has such a fervent fan base, but you're proof of that. It's this movie has moved a lot of people the way it moved you.
Well, it also has the same. I mean, if you compare it to Jaws, it has the same beats. It's really wonderful in that way, and that's you know, it starts off with the attack on the two bicyclers, which is very very similar to, you know, attacking Lori in the water.
Yes.
The second attack is with the guy with his flute thing.
Yeah, he was annoying.
Oh man, that was a great scene though.
I get, you know, listen. I didn't think it was a great scene, but I appreciate what you mean, what you're trying to say.
Oh man, the dialogue in that was so funny though. You know, farting music for a year. With R.G. Armstrong giving him, you know, and R.G. Armstrong this guy is kind of like a hippie, kind of like a Grateful Dead kind of guy, right?
Yes.
And he's traveling somewhere, and he's waiting for somebody to pick him up on this dirt road, and he's out in front of, you know, Amos's house, R.G. Armstrong, and he witnesses, you know, the character, the introduction to the character, and you know, the beats that character is going to go through. And they have this altercation because he basically says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And you know, he basically R.G. Armstrong tells him to stay out of it, and then he just doesn't get that character at all. He's like, I don't. You know, you can see the confusion in R.G. Armstrong's face about what is this guy? What is it? He, you know, because he's playing his horn.
Yeah, and you know, you could actually make the case that he wasn't really acting at that point. Right? He was like legitimately. He didn't know.
And then they have this wonderful thing. He's going to stick that thing so far up his ass he'd fart music for a year. And I don't know. I've taken that line. I'm taking that line with me for the rest of my days since saying that. I just love it.
Use that in a fight with somebody one day. Maybe spook them off. Maybe get your ass kicked. I don't know. But
so
again, I appreciate the fans, the way they love this film. I'm just not one of them.
Yeah. Well, one day we're gonna end up spending a whole 2 hours on just the car.
I'll watch it again. Is it streaming on Netflix?
It was streaming on Netflix. I don't know if it still is, but it's in my favorites. I have it actually. I have it sitting there. Anyway, so let's move from one of my favorite films to one of your favorite films from 1978.
Let me correct you. This is my favorite film of all time, any genre. Horror, sci-fi, drama, action, comedy, romance, you name it. All films, in my mind, bow before the Manitou.
The Manitou.
Yeah, now, I stand alone on Manitou Island because
Manitou Island
because of me with the but I think okay. Let's let me go over the plot for those of you who haven't seen it, and I know there are quite a few of you because it's whenever I mention it to newbies, they all look at me quizzically like, "What are you talking about?" The Manitou deals with a young lady played by Susan Strasberg. Her name is Karen, who lives in San Francisco and wakes up one day with a strange sort of lump behind her neck, a tumor, per se, that is growing rapidly. And she goes to the doctor to have it checked out, and they scan it and they look at it, and much to their amazement, it seems like it's a fetus growing on the back of her neck. Though that can't be possible, can it? It certainly can, because not only is it it's not a fetus, actually. It's the reincarnation of a 400-year-old evil Native American Indian medicine man. And Misquamacus is coming back to take over the world. And Misquamacus is a pissed off guy, and he's got some scores to settle. Unfortunately for him, he decided to reincarnate himself on the back of this young lady's neck. And in the course of the doctor's examination of her, x-rays are taken. And these x-rays hurt Misquamacus before he can make his big debut. The radiation...
It deforms him.
It deforms him. Yes, he comes out a midget. A midget. While all this is going on, her ex-boyfriend, who's played by the great Tony Curtis, his name is Harry Erskine, and she lets him know what's going on, and one thing leads to another, and they find out that it's an ancient Indian medicine man who's looking for revenge, and they hire another Indian medicine man to do battle with Misquamacus by the name of John Singing Rock, who's played by the great Michael Ansara. And the second half of the film deals with this epic struggle in the hospital, because Karen's still laid up, between the midget, 400-year-old midget Indian medicine man and John Singing Rock. And as ridiculous as it all sounds, and it is amazingly ridiculous, it works, for me, it works on every level. I saw the film in 78 when it was released, and it scared me. It was a scary movie back then. Why? I don't know. It was scary.
Why?
I don't know why. You know, the tagline was great. Evil does not die; it waits to be reborn. You know, that sold me right there. They got me with that. Over the years, as I rewatched it, over and over again, I realized how funny it all was. It's the funniest fucking movie you'll ever see, for all kinds of reasons. But basically, because there's a midget, a 400-year-old midget who is trying to take over the world with magic. And it ends in an epic scene that takes place in outer space, basically, with Misquamacus floating in outer space, backed up by, he calls his homeboy down to help him, called the old one, who was basically a big blob, looks like one of those Star Trek things from the 60s. and Karen and Susan Strasberg is floating topless on her hospital bed in outer space as well, and Tony Curtis and Michael Ansara are standing in a doorway
watching it all,
watching them, just like Will Smith in Men in Black. I swear they stole that Men in Black. The ubiquitous image of Men in Black was Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, that doorway that's floating in outer space. They stole that from the Manitou. I just wish they'd admit that and let it go, because that is the Manitou. And it all boils into this big battle with a lot of bad optical effects and funny looking mirrors, and the Manitous are the spirits of everything. Everything and everyone has a Manitou. So eventually they call on the Manitous of all the computers in the hospital to battle Misquamacus, and they beat him. It's just a great movie. There's nothing that's wrong with it. It has the greatest cast. In addition to who I mentioned, it's got Stella Stevens, Southern, Burgess Meredith is in the movie doing this patented nutty doctor thing, just babbling lines back and forth. It's such an entertaining film.
Yeah, because it starts out with Tony Curtis being a con man, right?
He reads tarot cards, and he preys on little old women who gladly give him money for him to tell them that they're going to live a great life. And he's a shyster. He doesn't back away from that. But he loves Karen. And it's because of his love for her that he finds the strength to battle Mystical Marcus. There are things in the movie you'll see things in this movie that you've never seen before.
And
None of them
never see again.
You never see them again. I swear to this day, from all the films that are remade, producers keep going and pulling out these films. I swear, Manitou would be such a great film to remake right now. No one would see this coming from a mile away, man. It would just kick so much ass. Just don't change the script. Don't do anything. Just up the effects, make it look a little better, and the Manitou would make a fortune. It wouldn't cost a lot of money. I'd write the screenplay for free just to see this done. I used to say I wanted to win the lotto, just so I could.
So you can make it.
Manitou was released on DVD, just so I could finance a DVD release of this and get all the asked to make comments, and I would have paid for that happily. The Manitou is such a great film, and it's directed by William Girdler, who directed a lot of really good films in the 70s. He directed Sheba Baby, starring Pam Grier. He directed Grizzly, which was basically Jaws of Claws, really good movie. He directed Abby, which was the Black Exorcist, really scary movie. At least for me, it was. The Animals, which is another those nature, mankind movies. It was a really, really good movie. He was a really good director who died just before the film was released, and I think that he was about to have his breakthrough. He was about to make his big movie. He was scouting locations for his next film, which is going to be called The Elementals. It never got made, obviously, but I really think if he had lived, he would have made one movie besides this that everybody'd be talking, because he really knew how to make a genre film. He's a really good director.
Well, my film from 1978 is probably the most famous of the ones on our list. Probably the one most well-known, arguably.
Definitely.
It's a film from Joe Dante. It stars a cast of people that we've talked about from time to time. We've talked about Bradford Dillman. Keenan Wynn has come up a couple times.
All over the place in the 70s.
Oh, yeah, 70s, all over the place. There's Kevin McCarthy is in this film. Barbara Steele.
Great
Paul Bartel.
Paul Bartel.
He would make some influential films in the coming ages. But this is called Piranha. Now this also is, I guess, it's a Roger Corman produced film.
Mm-hmm.
From that crowd, and it's we're still dealing with Jaws being one of the most influential films of the time, and now we got Piranha, and we're going to talk about this briefly. We're running out of time. This is another film that we could have a whole episode about.
Yes, definitely.
And it's just really effective because it's so flippin' gory. It has all these bloody scenes of flesh being torn away and heads floating around, and kids are in danger, and they have these great, terrible shots of puppet fish floating around attacking people. But there's also this wonderful narrative to it. You got Bradford Dillman as Paul Grogan, he's this scientist that's isolated himself. And he's just a really strange character, and you've got, of course, the great Dick Miller in it, and you've got Keenan Wynn, who has the greatest death scene ever.
Yeah, he has a wonderful. There's a lot, There's Dick Miller's in this movie. You gotta mention Dick Miller, because Dick Miller was in everything, and if only for a minute or two. Mm-hmm. Face is so recognizable. If you don't know him by name, you'll know his face. And he has a great role here as Buck Gardner, I think his name. Again, just talking about great actors, he's one, and he doesn't get a lot of mention, and I think you should mention him.
Well, he would follow around with Joe Dante quite a bit, and he would end up making some of his best films alongside of.
He's in every one for a second. He did a lot of Corman movies. He was in Little Shop of Horrors. He played Little Shop of Horrors, Bucket of Blood, way back in the 60s. He's been around for a long time.
Yeah, well, he did. Yeah, Gremlins, most famously.
He was in Gremlins too, yeah.
Yep. Great role in Gremlins. Anything with Joe Dante, you see Dick Miller in there. But let's move on. We're running out of time, so let's jump into 1979 and a little Chuck Connors coming along here. What's going on?
The film is called Tourist Trap. I don't know how many people have seen Tourist Trap. It's not a well-known movie. Starring Chuck Connors, Tanya Roberts from Charlie's Angels. She was on the Charlie's Angels for a week or two.
Yeah.
And directed by David Schmeller. It deals with a group of friends who are looking for one of their friends who's gone missing all of a sudden. And his trail leads them to this place called Slauson's Lost Oasis, which is basically a beat-up old tourist trap on the side of the road. Mr. Slauson, Connors, he turns out that he has a brother who lives there. He tells them he has a brother. He warns them not to visit a shack behind his shop because his demented brother Davy lives there. Davy doesn't like visitors. Of course, one of them decides to go over there, and there are a bunch of mannequins in this shack. Animated mannequins who stare at you and open their mouths in this nightmarish scream. And it turns out that Slauson is telekinetic, and he's lost his mind on top of everything else. And the tourist trap of the title is literally a tourist trap, because once you're there, he gets you. The film is a nightmare. It's a true nightmare. Not a lot of this makes sense. And that's what's great about this movie. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The narrative is off. None of it makes sense. Why is he telekinetic? Why is he killing these people? What? It doesn't matter. It's scary. The design of the film, the mannequins, the open mouths, the maws the scream that you hear, the score, the Pino Donaggio score is just brilliant. The kills, they're not bloody. There's not a lot of blood in this film, but they're brutal kills. They're quick and they're violent. And the final scene of this film is something that, if once you see it again, I know I said it before, but you'll never forget the final scene of this film. It's bizarre. It's unsettling. It's a freeze frame shot that it's just so scary because it displays madness. It's the closest to madness that I've ever seen in a film, and it's just horrifying. It's a great movie, and it needs to be rediscovered by everybody. If you haven't seen it yet, you really need to see Tourist Trap.
Yeah, this is definitely one that has been shunned and ignored for whatever reason.
But it's so much more than the sum of its parts. You have to sit and watch it and appreciate it. It's a brilliant movie. It's legitimately terrifying film.
Yeah, I might say that you're probably the first and only person I've ever heard champion it.
Oh, then they don't. People don't know what that's all. People don't know what that's all.
Well,
that's why we're here.
That's why it's a lost gem.
It's a great movie.
Well, mine, I think some people have heard of it. It is from 1979. Is probably one of the best, worst films ever. Stephen King has even professed that he loves this film and recognized how terrible it was. And it's Prophecy from 1979. Giant mutant bears jacked up on poisoned water from basically a processing plant upstream, have mutated bears to where they're big, ugly, and hungry, and it's just, it's got racial tension between the white not economist people, but the white landowners against the Native American population that wants their land back and doesn't want them poisoning their land, and this bear that doesn't give a shit about any of that and is just eating anybody. Well, they taunt it because they take two of its offspring away, Talia Shire and her most awesomeness, along with Robert Foxworth, her husband, tried to save two of the little mutant bears. And Mama Bear don't play that game. And
Don't
Mama
take
Bear
puppies there.
chase down their shit, and Mama Bear want to eat them for doing this, and she will not stop. She will go through cars. She will go through, and she'll find you if you're hiding underground. She'll chase you across
underwater.
a lake.
Which is a great scene. The scene where she goes across the river is just. I thought that's a really effective scene actually, because the bear disappears under the water for a while. You think it's gone.
Yeah, but it's not.
Takes a deep breath, but it's not.
It's
man.
not.
It comes up.
Of course, opposing sides have to join up and fight down the bear, and it just becomes a big honking thing of nonsense. And there's just some really great, silly scenes of the bear running through the woods. chasing them.
You couldn't really do that very effectively. The suit wasn't built for movement.
No, but it looked great.
Oh, it did.
But it didn't film well. But there are some really buried in this thing are a couple of really great scenes that make the movie worthwhile. You mentioned one with the whole lake scene where they cross the lake to get back to the cabin. But earlier on, there's a scene where they're hiding in these tunnels underneath camp, and they think the bear's attacking. He's ripping through the tents and he's killing people and everybody that there's this big battle that was going on, this argument between the opposing sides, and they all are underneath the ground together and they're huddled together, and they think the bear's gone, and the one officer decides, well, I'm going to look. and the way they shot the scene is great because it's cut and edited wonderfully well. He goes up, and one of the other guys races to go stop him because no, you're not supposed to do that. And then of course the bear's up there waiting for him, and he gets shaken around, and by the time you get to him, all you see is his feet, smacking around like a rag doll, and they drop him down, and of course his head is completely gone, and it is a great scene.
And everyone saw it coming.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, it's coming. It doesn't make it any less effective.
Oh man, and there's this. I don't want to say anymore. It's just, well, no. There's another scene earlier on that I remember they used that to sell the film early in the marketing, and it had to do with a bunch of campers that encounter the bear early, and you don't get to see the bear, but you get to see the bear attack. And one of the funniest damn things is one of them zips up his suit entirely. Not his suit. I guess it would be his sleeping bag, right?
Sleeping bag. His sleeping.
Zips up his sleeping bag. It's feathered down, and he's bouncing. Picture this. He's bouncing like this giant man-sized glowworm, bouncing away. And of course, the bear grabs it. You don't see the bear, but you see it picked up and slings it around, bangs it up against a tree, knocking all the feathered stuffing out, bloodied feathered stuffing, and just poofs like a snowfall of feathered down.
It obliterated the person inside.
Oh,
there's no blood or anything, just feathers.
And then it cuts to prophecy. It colors the film of what the tone is. It's great.
It is. It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. It had a cool ending. I thought it was a cool ending. People disagree, but I thought it was a pretty cool ending. It was directed by John Frankenheimer, who was a pretty high-powered director.
Yeah.
I think people expected a lot more when they saw his name connected to it.
Yeah. Oh, this movie's pure shit. But
it's spectacular. But it's and it's really funny that the main Indian role is played by Armand Asante, and as far as I know, as far as I can tell, I don't think he's American. I think I dare say he's Italian. I don't know why he got cast as an American Indian, but it works for the movie. It works fine for me. I loved every second of this movie.
Yeah, I as a kid, a teenager by this time, I totally bought it.
I thought it was great. I love that they just called it the monster movie. I thought, on the posters, the coming soon posters, I'd see the bear fetus sitting there in the dark, much like Alien. It looked like the alien egg. I think that's what they were trying to ape, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
and then they would just say prophecy, and then underneath the monster movie. How could you go wrong? You know, like, I don't care. I didn't care what it was about. All they needed to say was the monster movie, and that image of the bear fetus there. I was there, and I loved every second of it. The prophecy was great. People shit on it like crazy. But
Oh, well, it is terrible. It isn't.
it's the best kind of terrible.
But it's great in its terribleness. It is the epitome of what a B movie should be.
Mm-hmm. You know, and the fact that they actually spent money on this movie just made it that much more better. You know,
it's got your great creature design, even though the problem is it doesn't film well. But you got your great creature design. You've got science, rampant science going on with poison thingies that create the mutation. You've got the big fish. Oh my God, that big fish jumping out was the most amazing thing.
You've got the subplot with Talia Shire's character actually having eaten some of that fish.
And being pregnant.
Right, and wondering what was going to come out of her when 9 months from now. That they never, followed through with that. But
yeah, it was just a thread.
Too, if this movie was successful, obviously they were going to go that way, but it didn't work out for them.
No.
I think you saw it, and a couple of other people, and that was it.
Yeah, me and about 10 people saw the film. Me, you, and 10 other people. I recently got this on DVD, like out of a $5 bin, like a year or two, maybe 3-4 years ago. And gosh, I just devoured it when I watched it again. It was so bad and great at the same time. And it, I was thinking, who played the grandfather?
Oh, the Indian guy.
I was thinking it was somebody, but it's not. But when you recognize him, when you see him, you'll recognize him because he was like everywhere. But that role, and how it ended for him.
Yeah, it ended really sad for him.
It was powerful. And then you got Richard Dysart as the corrupt politician.
Yeah, it worked for the
corporate
company.
Guy, right?
Good.
And he would be in, wasn't he in The Thing, right?
Yes, he was in The Thing the following year.
And when he gets stuck underneath that fence, it's just like, you don't like the guy, right? He's the bad guy. He's the villain. He's the human villain. But he's stuck under the fence, and the creature's about to get him, and you want him to live.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, get out! But he's the bad guy. and for as bad as the movie is, it reaches that. It gets that.
Oh no, yeah, you have people yelling at the screen.
Yeah.
Something I miss in movies nowadays, honestly. People back in the 70s, people yelled at the screen. And it's, get out, run! That was a big part of going to the movies, of the whole experience. And you can't do that in the movies anymore. People will shush you.
They will shush you.
Yeah, you get ushered out of the movie. But back in the 70s, man, people were emotionally invested in this stuff, man. And they'd yell at the screen, run for your life. When Dysart got caught under the fence, you only see his face, but you hear the crunch.
Oh, that was great.
The crunch is so effective, man. They were like, oh, fuck, you got him by the balls, literally, man. That was a really rough scene.
But it's another film that you could spend an entire hour on.
Yeah, that's another film that could be remade, actually.
They could, and make it a lot better.
Yeah, make it a lot better, man. And there's room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. Absolutely.
Especially with that one. Well, Santos, let's wrap this up. It's well over 2 hours. I think we've talked to 70s a gaggle here. You can catch both of us over at the official horrornews.net podcast, and I hope you do. And I thank you for coming and talking about the 70s.
I thank you for having me, sir. This was a blast. I love this.
It's the best films. It is the best films.
Definitely. They don't make them like they did in the 70s anymore.
Absolutely
not. Now it would be wise to look back to that, try to get the magic again.
Right. So where can we find more of you on the internet?
Oh, at Facebook at The Black Saint HNN, at Twitter at TBS Says You, and on Pinterest at Santos Ellin Jr., and Letterboxd at The Black Saint, all one word.
And you can find more of me at DocRotten.com, of course, over at HorrorNews.net. And you can find me at Facebook, Dr. Rotten, and at Letterboxd.com/DocRotten. we're wrapping this up really quickly. Santos, we should ask people to write in and let us know if we want to talk more about the 70s, right?
I would love to hear feedback from you people, especially after they've tried some of these films out, and
Ooh, yes.
their opinions, see if they agree or disagree with us.
All right, well, let's say goodbye and let's come back another day.
Yes.
All
Yes, that would be cool.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Peace. Love.
This place is gonna be rotten.
The funeral is about to begin.
I want you to go as quietly as possible, not make a sound until I tell you to run.
Kill the brain, and you kill the ghoul.
I can't explain it.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
They feed only on warm casualties. This place is gonna be rotten.